Where are you going with all those bottles?
Try to save the world.
My connection with nature is really strong. And for me as a person, the more time I spend outside in the outdoors, in the wilderness, the happier I am. Doing this foot-powered snowboarding and spending a month at a time camped out and disconnected has just strengthened that connection and really brought into light the importance of nature in my life. In 2007, I started Protect Our Winters because in my lifetime spending time in the mountains, I started seeing significant change to the mountain. And I wanted to rally the winter sports community together to slow down climate change. What I call Eco 101 is just inspiring people to get outdoors. And with the films I've done, that's been the goal, is to hopefully inspire people to get outdoors. In doing so, they'll have this connection with nature and then hopefully want to protect nature. It's not only just going out there for personal benefits and enlightenment, but venturing with a purpose, you can add this whole nother layer, which is doing really positive things for those areas.
Cliff Bar has wanted to operate at the juncture between athletic adventure and environmental sustainability. We want to be protecting the places where we play. It's built into our culture and trying to surround ourselves with people who are also conservation and sustainability minded. It's the idea that those who are going out and enjoying the outdoors have that responsibility to give back. It's not all about going out and shredding the biggest lines. It's about someone who wants to shred the biggest lines, but also think about doing that again in the future and having a place for their kids to do the same things. And when we're going out and finding athletes who want to represent our brand, that's who we're looking for. We're finding those people who also espouse those same values. Greg's sort of one of those rare human beings that has the ability to connect with people and make them feel like you can understand the bigger issues at play, especially in the outdoors. Just meeting him and talking to him, you really get inspired. I mean, he hiked the length of the Andes Mountains. It took him like 2.5 years or something.
He was Adventure of the Year in 2008 for National Geographic. His adventure with a purpose approach is something I've never seen done in that manner, and to see his passion towards conservation is really cool.
In my own personal expeditions, I really had this feeling like I just wanted to be doing more with my time outside. Rather than having totally self-indulgent experiences out there, I saw an opportunity to train and teach outdoor enthusiasts to collect scientific data. Adventurers and Scientists for Conservation is an organization that's dedicated to identifying where there's a conservation need and bringing volunteers who have specialized skills in the outdoors to those needs so that we can provide the information that's going to push a conservation effort over the top.
Right when I was getting ready to go to Nepal, I'd heard about what Greg was doing.
So Ryan and Cliff Bar knew that Jeremy was going to be headed out to the Himalaya.
It was literally like the last phone call I had hopping on a plane in Nepal was with Greg. And when he had heard that I was going to this remote glacier in the Himalayas, he's like, wow, that could really help this study that we're trying to do.
That presented a really awesome opportunity for us to get some really important snow and ice samples from his route.
We definitely got a lot of walking to do. It is a big, big, big world. I was all in from the get-go and got the crash course in how to take the samples and do the study, but it was something really cool element to this trip. Higher. Been feeling it. Samples from the glacier. Here, here, here.
Dr. Natalie Kerwald is working over in Venice, Italy, and her research is all about understanding how quickly glaciers are thinning throughout the world.
Something that's really new about my work is that I'm able to show that glaciers are melting, losing mass at elevations even as high as 6,000 meters above sea level, which is about 20,000 feet above sea level. This is important because in some areas of the central Himalayas, for example, where Jeremy was, provides water for a minimum of 500 million people, and it could be up to 2 billion people. Glaciers naturally replenish themselves with snowfall, but with increased temperature, you can sometimes have glaciers that melt more quickly than they can accumulate. We're able with satellites to see really well how much glaciers are melting over a large scale, but what we're really dependent on explorers or people that go and put their boots on the ground in these regions is to be able to get samples so we can measure how glaciers are thinning, how they're losing mass from their surface down towards the bedrock. These samples contain markers where we know what year we're looking at. And these markers happen to be a strange side effect from the 1950s and the 1960s when the US and the Soviets set off atmospheric nuclear bombs. And they sent a pulse of radiation across the world that fell out in precipitation, in snow and in rain. And so you can use these pulses of radioactivity to learn about the world, because when we see them, we know that that snow fell in either 1962, 63, or 1952, 53. Let's say the accumulation rate is 1 meter per year. If we were going back to 1962, 63, we would need for sure over 40 meters of snow and ice above that. But if that pulse of radioactivity is really close to the surface, we know that all of that snow that should have accumulated between the time from 1962, 63 to the present is gone. And so what we know then is that glacier is thinning from the top down, that it's losing essentially stored fresh water from its surface down towards the internal part of the glacier.
What are you doing, Jer? I'm taking snow samples for this climate study. My final samples came after this 12-hour day up at high elevation, and just to dig a pit at that elevation and get down deep within the glacier to get the proper samples. It takes some time.
I've been just over 20,000 feet, and it's cold, and it's hard to breathe.
Relentless.
To function and to actually collect samples is a pretty amazing feat.
I need to dig down about 6 feet, and every foot and a half we'll come in and take snow samples and send them to Italy, where they're doing the study at the University of Venice. It feels good to hopefully help these scientists further understand climate change, and it just adds another layer to a trip. And I feel better about going to the other side of the world and doing all this stuff.
One of the biggest unknowns that we have is we don't know how much fresh water exists in the world. And glaciers are a big reservoir of fresh water, but they're melting due to increased temperatures and in some places also changing precipitation patterns. It's very likely that this is happening across the world. We just don't have the data, the actual snow and ice samples. And so with Adventures and Scientists for Conservation, this is great because people are going out and collecting these samples from all these locations where we really need to know if we're losing water, if we're losing glacier mass. And so we can help give this information to people who can then decide what their policy is, how they want to adapt to less fresh water.
My science teacher from high school that I barely passed will be very happy to know that I was part of a science experiment.
We have some very initial results from looking at the samples, in which one of the samples, which is the deepest one of the snow pit that he did at 18,000 feet, is showing a peak in radioactivity. We need to do some more tests to see what this peak is. So we don't know if this peak could actually perhaps be from the Fukushima accident, or if it could be from Chernobyl, or if it could be if it has the signature of the 62-63 peak. If it has the signature from the 62-63 peak, that's a huge finding. So if this glacier is thinning at 18,000 feet, this means that glaciers in that region of Nepal are very likely to be thinning also. And so that leads into regional rivers, where these regional rivers provide fresh water to millions, if not billions of people.
Creating and working with Adventurers and Scientists for Conservation has allowed me as an individual to magnify my impact and to get folks like Jeremy, who care so much about the places that they play, to give them the opportunity to contribute is an amazing feeling of being able to see my impact grow exponentially with each new person who goes out.
The common denominator in this whole project between Cliff Bar, between Jeremy, and between Greg, it's this idea of adventure with a purpose, that in pursuit of these things that are selfish in nature, there's something bigger that can come from it.
Without people caring about the environment and nature, it will go away. And the reality is snowboarding will be the least of our worries if we continue on this track. So, find something that you connect with, because collectively, if we all do that, then we can make a difference.
Our soul.